Rant Live.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We've got some relatively good news to share with all of our listeners after having to share some really kind of historically bad news about what the Cubs had been doing not too long ago. The Cubs actually went to San Diego, and much to our dismay, and against both of our predictions, I think we both said that they were going to get swept, didn't we?
Did we say swept or 1-3? I think you said swept. I think I said they'd take one. Maybe. Maybe we did both.
So they took two.
I don't know. Yeah. First series win since the opening series, which really
there's an asterisk there.
Right. This is their first true series win because one of the games against Milwaukee got banged and pushed back. So technically, they won 2 out of 3 games that were played, but it was a 4-game series, or was supposed to be. So in theory, that could still end up as a split if we do count the rescheduled game. But regardless, they took 2 out of 3 against a very solid Padres team, and did so, other than the defense doing everything it possibly could to give it away. When Efros came in, it was almost like you couldn't even schedule it to be any worse. Like you couldn't plot that out, say, how could our defense try to give this away? Like in every conceivable aspect, which is what's awesome about that dude. And again, I will stand Scott Efros regardless, but to come into the situation he did and to be forced with, it was like Jonathan VR kind of butchering a ball. He's giving up all kinds of soft contact. Nobody can handle it. Willson Contreras gets a freaking catcher's interference, and he still ends up getting out of the inning with, I think, only the 1 run scored because they had like a catcher's interference on bases loaded. It's that felt, honestly, as that inning was unfolding, I really felt like that was, I was like, okay, here we go. Right. Here's where this Cubs team implodes. And they didn't. And then, they ended up kind of, although, Michael Givens did his best to try to give some of it back too. And
he did.
Hey, they got through it. They got through it. Yeah, boy,
they did. Let's start at the top.
Well, yeah.
Let's just start with the first game, because that's kind of, fun to talk about. Hendricks, who is Kyle Hendricks, by the way? I mean, we've got a guy who completely dominated. I mean, looked like, the best pitcher in Major League Baseball with his performance. And he's had so many up and down performances. I mean, he's had 7 starts. He's given up 1 run, 6 runs, 2 runs, no runs, 6 runs, 4 runs, no runs. And this latest version was him with giving up 3 hits, no runs. He's on our booms list, by the way. 116 pitches thrown, 80 of them for strikes. That's astounding. 3 hits, no runs, 7 Ks, 1 walk in 8 2/3 inning. And that 1 walk came in the 9th inning. So really, I mean, a guy who's just, man, it's like when he can locate, he's the best there is. But the problem is that, he can only locate about a third of the time.
Yeah, at least with that kind of consistency, right? And I think the really important thing here, and it's a dead horse, right? But like Hendricks locating is a different deal from Justin Verlander or Max Scherzer or Jacob deGrom locating, right? If we or even Clayton Kershaw at this point, although Kershaw has kind of moved into that territory to an extent just because the velo is so far down. It's just that, and we've seen it with Hendricks, right? Like if he doesn't have the curveball working, right? Because he can still get guys with the 2-seam, provided it's placed well and it's coming situationally in there. But he can't really rely on just change up fastball most days. Like if that curveball is not working as sort of a change of pace, not to, I want to point that differently from the change up, right? But if he doesn't kind of have that in there to keep hitters honest, he does run into trouble, because if guys can sit, there's not as much, and obviously, right, the changeup has different movement from the fastball, everything like that, but there isn't that velocity separation, nor is there that capability to blow hitters away that that will really get guys if he's not being deceptive and absolutely. So I think the location part is, can he pinpoint his spots? And if he can't, it's the same thing we saw with John Lester, right? When Lester could pinpoint his spots, he was fine. But how many times did we see with Lester where he could no longer do that, and now all of a sudden those pitches on the fringe are balls? You know, guys are spitting on them easily, or they're just
definitely towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so
no, I mean, it was a vintage one. Yeah,
Hendricks is one of those guys that, you know, if you're a team in the playoffs, he could come out and give you just a shutdown performance, and you know, and possibly, you know, be a big part of a team being able to win a series in the playoffs. And I mean, I have to think that that's kind of how it's going to be sold, because I mean, if the Cubs are going to trade everyone and sell out here shortly, which I have to believe they're going to do, Hendricks has got to be one of those guys that, from at least from the front office perspective, they want him to continue to have outings like he had, shutting down San Diego. In that same game, Willson Contreras goes 3 for 4. He's been red hot lately. Ian Happ 2 for 4 with a double. Seiya Suzuki had a double and an RBI. And yeah, I mean, Willson Contreras, another boom. This guy is on fire. He's the only Cubs hitter that's over 300 batting average, 304. He's got a 935 OPS, 166 WRC plus. He went 7 for 10 in the series with a home run, and get this, no strikeouts, 2 walks. He's, you know, for the season, he's got 4 home runs, 6 doubles, and a triple. He's just, man, I mean, you know, he had a slow start, but he has been just on fire lately.
Yeah. The only thing, because I mentioned it earlier, there's still, and this is the trade-off that you have, right? And I do wonder to what extent we had heard a lot for a few seasons there, I feel like, where he was really working on his defense, right? Really working on getting the framing better and blocking and that sort of thing. And he's a really athletic guy, so that, you know, he can get in front of those pitches well. But I think we've seen a lot so far this year where I mentioned the catcher's interference. You see a lot of situations where whether he's getting caught, you know, whether he's getting crossed up with the pitcher, whether he is just the way he sets up. I mean, I've seen some pitches where he's dragging that thing across so far, or he's set up in such a way that the way he's bringing that pitch back or following away with it, the umpire is fooled. So you'll see a guy throw a dead strike that gets called a ball because he's moving so much that it looks like
he goes to back pick, or he's doing something like that.
Yeah. And we saw that. I think there was one last, like, he's already jumping into the move to back pick guy, and it costs him with that because it looks like he's already coming out of the with it, and that's fine as long as the offense is there, right? And so I just think that's the trade-off, and I wonder with that, though, how that ages. But honestly, I think with his athleticism, and I've said this for a long time now, I'm fearful of how that ages. So at a certain point, I'm just like, you know what? As long as you keep hitting, great. That's fine. The defense, some of that can erode a little bit. Just keep knocking the piss out of the ball, and I'm fine with that. So I'd honestly rather have him continue to be an elite offensive catcher and an okay defensive catcher than really try to dial it up and be an elite defensive catcher at the possible expense of his offense.
Yeah, for sure. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I tend to think that, you know, with age, he'll stop trying to do all these kind of crazy things that he does, the back picks and, you know, all the moves he tries to do with runners on base. Because I do think that a lot of times he'll get in a position where it's like he's just not cognizant of what he's trying to do with the pitcher, and he gets out of rhythm with the pitcher, even though the pitcher's still throwing good strikes and, you know, maybe borderline strikes, and he gets distracted by the guys that are on base. So maybe as he ages and becomes kind of physically less able to, you know, do these things, you know, his arm isn't as capable as it once was, things like that. As long as that offense can stay there, I agree. I think that's what a team is going to be looking for, right? I don't think I mean, there's a lot of good defensive catchers in the world. There are very few very good offensive catchers, and I think that's where the premium comes into play with Willson Contreras. Moving on to Tuesday's game, wow, that was kind of a heartbreaker. I mean, Miley came out and threw 3 innings. He didn't look bad, I mean, 3 runs on 5 hits. It just kind of was what you would expect to see from him. Gesellman came on in the 4th, gave up a double and cruised in the 5th, but with 2 outs, he gave up a double in the 6th and got pulled for Chris Martin. And Chris Martin came in and gave up a single, a double, a single, and the Pods, next thing you know, we're up 5-3. So that wasn't exactly great.
Bear with me for a moment. I am moving because my Wi-Fi sucks. So I'll be back in the picture just in a minute with a chair.
Okay. And so, yeah, it was Chris Martin came in and just gave up the lead in a game that was really close. And it got real exciting there in the bottom of the 9th inning with Frank Schwindel having the bases loaded, and he hit a ball that the moment he hit that ball, it just felt like it was a grand slam. And it was something that you really want for Frank Schwindel, because here's a guy who was relegated back down to Iowa the day before, had car trouble in Chicago, so couldn't make the drive to Iowa until the following day. Here comes the following day, and he's told to get on an airplane to go to San Diego in a middle seat.
Coach, mind you. Yeah, middle seat coach.
Middle seat in coach. And I'm sure, it was probably the plane was probably pretty full. And he gets there, and you want nothing more for a guy who's just really got the best attitude on the team, probably. Just a fun-loving guy who's, took a long time to get to the big leagues and stick with it, I should say. And he came so close to that grand slam. And I know that people are saying dead ball era and all this stuff, and there is evidence that the ball has been deadened a little bit. I think that it varies from stadium to stadium. I don't think you're seeing the same results at every single stadium. But I do think, there is an issue there with the balls and with the humidors that they're using, and maybe how it's not maybe being consistently applied from city to city or stadium to stadium. And perhaps San Diego is kind of, on that list, but it just felt like that was a grand slam.
Yeah, and Petco has been a ballpark that, and I know they've tried to make changes and they've done different things, but it's not been necessarily a hitter's haven, right? And there is a difference. And they were talking about this during yesterday's game, which is the only afternoon game of them, where during the day, that park plays a little differently. You do see balls going out a little bit more easily. The shift at night, and then the way the wind comes in off the ocean and things like that can kind of have changes. And so there's some issues there. I think the biggest thing, and you and I were kind of having a sidebar conversation about this, I think yesterday. There's been a lot that's online about it one way or the other. And, a lot of people are going back and forth. The balls were juiced. Now they're dead. Now, but it's not so much that they're dead now. It's that the intent anyway was to bring them back to kind of what they used to be. However, in that process, and here's the problem, because I want to get this out there, because I think a lot of people are they just look at this in this very binary, juiced or dead. And it's not so much that, yeah, they were juiced, which first of all, MLB would not admit to it first. Right. That's my initial problem, is that they took them a long time to admit what everyone knew was obvious in the first place. But the other issue is that, first of all, Major League Baseball owns Rawlings, which is the manufacturer, right? So there's the first problem, is that Major League Baseball can just kind of do what they want with it. But the problem is there's so little quality control, and there's really the way that these balls are all to spec, right? One way or the other. You can look at the definition of illegal baseball. Everything they've done falls within that in terms of size, shape, weight, all that stuff. But clearly, the quality control over the manufacturing process is such that it's not just the balls are deadened, they're not consistent. Some of them, there's they'll talk about dead spots that are in them, soft spots. There's a softer core, and so there's a problem with the outer port, and as you mentioned, the humidors. So some of those are having, again, they're supposed to add humidity, right? That's the whole point of starting to use them They started in Arizona and Colorado a lot, so they wanted to make sure these balls weren't being affected by the thin, dry air. But again, what's happening is you go from the humidor to out of the humidor, different weather conditions. The ball is literally changing shape as a result of going in and out of these humidors. And so you're getting these inconsistent outer cores, or not outer core, you got the inner core, but the outer surface of the ball is shifting. It's not uniform. And so now you don't know how these, and they still got balls from 2021, right? They manufacture millions of these things. Think about how many baseballs they go through in a major league game. So how many of them do you have to have? How many dozens do you have to have just on hand for any one game? And the differences from ball to ball, sometimes from inning to inning, and you can see that if weather conditions change, even on a day-to-day basis or within the course of a game in some cases, that ball is going to behave differently. That's the problem I have. It's not that they juiced them or they deadened them. It's that you don't know how that ball is going to react on a game-to-game, or if you throw one in the dirt, now you got a different ball. It could be a ball-to-ball basis. A pitcher should not have to worry about the primary tool of his job, right? If you're a carpenter and you're going out there and working on a house and you've got to, I mean, I know these guys aren't necessarily working with a hammer and physically hammering in each nail, but if you had to reach in and get a different hammer each time you're going to drive a nail, and each of those hammers is different, your job becomes appreciably harder than if you have an implement that you are used to, that you have grown to love and know, and that you can use, or it's a different nail gun, whatever. It is wild to me that these pitchers are being asked to perform under those circumstances, and it shouldn't be the case. MLB could easily fix this by just implementing better control. That's what I hate. I really hate it. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing, is just like, to your point, if you're going to get a consistently different product or baseball to hit every single game, or from when you bounce from location to location, that's the issue. It's that the ball is actually being manipulated probably more than it ever has been before it actually gets to the field of play. And that's the problem. It's not, and I know people have said, oh no, this is because we had this live ball era, and now these are just back to regular. It's not back to regular, because back to regular, if we have a concept that really is regular, would have been just here's a pack of balls, right? Not a humidor, because they only started using humidors the last few years or so.
I mean, they've used them, like I said, in select locations, right? Arizona and Colorado,
Colorado,
for years and years, but it's only become a universal thing for the last couple of years, or the last year, really. I think it's this year that has pretty much been everywhere. But that's the thing, is like, do you need to humidify a ball in Florida?
Yeah,
come on, exactly. Man. Have you ever been to Miami? You don't need a humidor in Miami. Like, oh, it's supposed to be universal, but it's not, because that's like saying, okay, you probably have to run your air conditioner more frequently in Arizona than I do in Indiana, right? I mean, just why? Well, it's a different climate, right? But you have drier heat than I do. So if it's 95 here for me, it feels much more oppressive than 95 for you. 95 for you in the summer would probably be pretty nice, actually.
It's very nice.
And if it's like 89 here, and it feels like shit, because it was like 50 on Saturday morning, and now it's hot and sunny. That is a drastic difference. So if you're talking about like 50 and rainy on one day, and then 89 and sunny the next, but still very humid, those are incredibly different conditions in and of themselves. But having a ball, then, so you think about where that ball is, and that, the hide on the outside, the shell, right, is meant to fit over that core and the wrapping and all that. But if you get the expansion and contraction of those different weather conditions, particularly through the Midwest, where it really changes frequently, that's one of the problems. And again, it comes back to what baseball as an entity, right, the Royal Baseball is trying to do to the baseball, and has tried to do. And I think a lot of this is being done. They're trying to create a solution to a problem that didn't exist, right? Like, they thought, well, if we juice these up, there'll be more offense, right? And there was, but then it was like you were having lazy pop flies that made it out of the ballpark. Like, oh crap, we didn't mean to do that. Now it looks artificial. Ooh, oh, people are on to us. Oh, damn it, we better fix this now. And it's like, but they're doing things so quickly and haphazardly that again, it's again, you probably don't deal with this either, but the pothole problems throughout the Midwest, right? We get potholes a lot because of expansion and contraction due to the changes in the weather. And then what they'll do is they'll just take this hot patch crap. It's just like, rocks, just gravel mixed in with tar for, basically slap that in the old pothole, covered over. Well, yeah, but guess what? That lasts about a week because then if the conditions shift again, that shit's just blowing back up again. So it's this hastily created solution that was not really done, I think, with effective forethought to what really would happen as a result of this. It's like, just go back to like, how did you make baseballs in 1998? All right, do that again. Just there you go. That's all. Just make the same damn ball over and over again. But what do I know, man? It's only Rawlings. They've only been manufacturing this stuff forever, and it's only been since Major League Baseball bought them a few years ago that all this shit hit the fan. I wonder what the problem is. Huh?
Yeah. Well, and the inconsistencies, they get applied over, several hundred at bats a day. And when your sample is that big, you really start to see the inconsistencies. It becomes very apparent, as you get several hundred every single day and thousands of at bats a week and balls, mini balls being hit. It really starts to come to light where it becomes very obvious. A pothole, like you were talking about, yeah, maybe a few hundred cars pass over that. You don't get a huge sample there, but in baseball, it's enormous. And so you can really see the impact. And I guess that's something that Major League Baseball doesn't understand, that we as consumers of their product can see what's happening, whether they come out and admit to it, which I've never seen them admit to it.
They admitted a couple years ago though, that they admitted that they had juiced them. They did finally admit, like after like x-rays and CAT scans and literal dissections of balls had proven it, right? And statistically, like all these things came out. Rob,
it's hard to hide from sometimes.
And there's all kinds of stuff on this that they finally had to come out and say, and it was that it had been a tighter, a more tightly wound core is essentially what it came down to, right? And that we manipulated it. Like after first saying, no, we didn't, they're all within spec, well, yeah, but look at what it says on what a baseball has to be. It's basically just, it has to be like spherical and within a certain amount of circumference and then within a certain weight limit. Inside of that, you can do a whole hell of a lot
of room to do two different things there.
Yes.
And so all this is to say that Frank Schwindel got robbed. His hit fell just inches shy of being a grand slam, which was kind of a buzzkill. And then on Wednesday, the Cubs come out and they win 7-5. Keegan Thompson made his first start of the season. He looked okay. I mean, he had a couple walks. He gave up a couple of runs. Efros, you mentioned, had that inning that was like the Little League inning from hell, where for some reason Jonathan VR couldn't figure out how to play baseball and where to throw the ball to get an out. And then Givens comes in and gives up 2 home runs, which not his best outing. Nico sprains his ankle by running into an umpire.
What was the ump doing there? Like they were like, I was listening to that part on the radio, and they were like, "Why is he's like 2 steps behind Horner? What is he doing? Why is he positioned there?" It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, and we still haven't seen video of it. I haven't seen video of it, at least. And then the good part about it was Alfonso Rivas hit a go-ahead single in the top of the 8th, driving in 2 runs, and the Cubs came away with a well-earned, much-needed series win in San Diego. So bravo, Cubs. Good job. So the booms, I was saying Contreras, he's just on fire. Ortega actually played really well. He went 4 for 11, a double, stolen base. He got caught stealing once. Rivas is looking really good. He's settling in at first base, even though Schwindel made a reappearance.
To answer a Facebook question, Rivas came over in the Tony Kemp trade from Oakland.
Tony Kemp, that was a good deal for the Cubs. 2 for 7, home run, game-winning single. Hendricks obviously booming away. The dooms really are the injuries, to be honest with you. I mean, no player was really awful. I mean, except for maybe Patrick Wisdom striking out 7 times in 12 at bats. Woo, man, when he strikes out, it's just ugly. But the injuries, my God, we've got Horner with an ankle, Madrigal with a back, Suzuki with an ankle, Stroman and Robertson on the non-designated, what appears to be the COVID list, but we haven't heard official word there. And and now we're starting to get injuries in the minor leagues. Ed Howard is now out after a vicious collision at first base. Brennan Davis went on the IL today with the lower back injury. And so it's just like all throughout the entire Cubs system now. This is getting ugly. Hopefully we get Stroman back in this series as they head to Arizona. But we could really use Robertson back as well because, between Martin and Givens, I'm just not sure those guys can be relied on consistently. And Robertson's been really good out of the bullpen.
Yeah, that's another COVID guy there, which kind of that part's a little bit scary, and whether that'll spread to others, who knows? But I mean, it's just and the thing that's an issue is like as they're starting to get some of the guys healthy, then other people are, it's like, all right, well, if Horner was hurt or he is, we don't. I mean, maybe they've announced. I haven't seen anything today. I haven't looked at it. I know the extent they were waiting for kind of swelling to go down to figure out exactly what it sounds like an ankle sprain, but it's like, okay, under normal circumstances, well, Andrelton Simmons would be your backup. That's the whole point of him being in the organization. However, he's still working his way back from that shoulder thing that he suffered at the start, right? So you have, at the point where these guys are supposed to be. And so then, what do you have? You've got Ildemaro Vargas, who's going to have to be putting in a lot more time. Does that mean VR is putting in, which I just,
Vargas is probably a better option than VR, but not at the plate.
Right. Well, and that's the problem. It's like VR is DH at this point to me because like I can handle a guy who's not a great defensive player, but the dude looks like it's not like one of these where he just doesn't have range and can't make plays or he's got a weak arm. As you meant, it just looks like there's times
it's mental.
Like, yeah, like he's backing up on balls at third that he needs to be charging. He doesn't know which base. There was a fielder's choice last night because he just made the play to the wrong base. And I just it's baffling to me because it looks like it's almost like the yips. It's not that he's making bad throws, but it's like he just doesn't know what he's doing out there. And I don't know if that's because he's moving along.
He has made some bad throws, though. Let's not glaze over that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and I don't. So I don't want to discount that. I'm just saying, like the things that are concerning to me more than even that is just like he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing, and and I don't know part of that. And I certainly don't want to. I want to be careful how I phrase this, but he doesn't look like he's in the best shape, I guess, and so I don't know if that is leading to, I mean, speaking as someone who has gained a few pounds as he's gotten older, I know that I'm a step slower, even if I'm out there playing slow pitch softball. And so there are things that as you lose, even if it's fractions of a second due to your overall physical fitness, that's going to force you to try to do some things to sort of cheat a little bit, if you will, right? Set yourself up. If I'm playing softball, and I by no means do I want to try to equate my agility and skill on an old man softball team to what's going on in Major League Baseball, right? I'm just saying, like, my thought process with that is like, I've got to cheat to play back a little bit deeper because I just don't have the speed and the quickness that I used to that I could play up on something. I got to cheat toward the bag a little bit more if I want to try to turn a double play. Those are just things I have to do. As a result, my thought process may be different. Things don't just happen. And I don't know if that's what's going on there, but dude does not have, we talked before about how he shouldn't be playing on the left side of the infield. And now I'm really concerned with him playing at second base as well. So now where do you put him? I would, he's hitting well, make him the DH if he's going to be in there. But then how the hell do you fill out the rest of the infield? Because everybody else is hurt. Everybody else is hurt. To some extent, Madrigal's hurt. Not that you really want him playing much right now anyway. Horner's hurt. Wisdom had the tender ankle. I don't know if that contributed to any of the strikeouts or not, if there was a bit there. Like, who the hell's going to play? You know, Simmons is still out. Like, these guys are dropping like flies. You know, maybe they could just put Rivas at every position. I don't know.
He seems to be the only really reliable one, but you know, I mean, and the guys that are playing well for the Cubs it's Willson Contreras, it's Ian Happ, it's Nico Horner, you know, to a lesser degree, just recently, Seiya Suzuki, Alfonso Rivas, as you mentioned, is playing really well. I mean, all in all, the Cubs aren't playing that terribly offensively. I mean, I think which is weird. They just can't string it together. They've had stretches where they haven't scored runs, and we've talked about them averaging, you know, less than 2 runs over multiple games. Was it 6 or 7 games there for the stretch that they had going? And so it's a confusing team to say the least. I mean, there are times where they actually look like a legitimate Major League Baseball team, and then there are other times that they look like they're not even a AAA level team, and so it's weird. It's a weird season, and I guess all you can hope is that you know, going into Arizona here. And listen, I know we were thinking that this Arizona series was going to be one where, you know, the Cubs might have the upper hand, but they're playing well. They're 17-15. They haven't lost the series since April 24th. That includes winning 2 of 3 against the Dodgers, splitting a 4-game series against the Cardinals, sweeping the Marlins, winning 2 of 3 against the Rockies, and 2 of 3 against the Marlins. 7-3 in their last 10. Their pitching is outstanding, and the Cubs are going to have some problems this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Arizona's pitching is really, really good. Their starting pitching is among the best in baseball right now, if you look at it in terms of ERA. And now the good news about that is just starting pitchers are going not going nearly as deep into games as they ever have before. You know, this is the shortest outing. These are the shortest outings in general across the league that we've seen. It's not just a Cubs thing. So, you know, if you can get into that bullpen, if you can find some things here or there, you know, then there's the thought process that maybe things fall back down to earth for them. You know, I mean, Madison Bumgarner can't keep drinking from the fountain of youth forever. So, you know, maybe keep checking his fingers. Have the umpire give him a hand massage, you know, between innings and piss him off. I don't know.
Look at him with a very weird look.
That's still the weirdest. And the guy, like, but I'm like, what were you doing? Like, where does that even? I'm still baffled by it. It was so odd.
And then he like apologized for it, but he didn't apologize for it. He was just like, I'm sorry for my behavior the other day. It's like, well, can you say exactly what you're sorry for? Can you please explain to us what you did? Because
I wouldn't let a child get away with that. Yeah. What behavior was that there? You know, was it Dan Bellino? Is that who it was, or what? Like, what exactly did you? Because why were you rubbing him down and then like staring longingly into his eyes or whatever?
As he was doing,
it's super like, weird. Yeah, it was just odd. Speaking of which, so it's funny because somebody on Twitter gave me a bunch of shit yesterday for like criticizing an ump in a 7th grade game, and what I was more criticizing was the fact that, strange, but my bigger point, and granted it wasn't great, and I totally get it, right? So I want to put this out there and clarify a few things. First of all, youth sports, there's kind of an issue with getting umpires in the first place because parents are assholes. I guess I could throw myself in there, but I'm not like physically accosting anyone, you know what I mean? Or yelling at them, getting in their face and verbally abusing them. So like this guy showed up at the park. He didn't have his behind the plate gear, right? He didn't have his chest protector, his shin guards, his mask, because he wasn't expecting to be the home plate ump. So he was calling balls and strikes from behind the pitcher and then also playing base ump from there. Not doing a great job. But the thing that was kind of bothersome to me is when you have, and this goes up to any level, right? When the umpire kind of makes themselves an obvious part of the game, like he would wait, there'd be a pitch, and he would like noticeably pause and then make a loud strike call. And if it was a ball, he wouldn't make a call at all sometimes. But because it was a delayed call, there were several times, like there was one where it looked like just right down the pipe on strike 2, and the other team's walking off the field because they assume it was strike 3. And they've all made 3 steps before he calls the ball. He would ring guys on a swinging strike 3. Like, you don't ring somebody up when they swing. They already know they're out. It's not a call. So it was just very odd. And I don't like that. I don't like having, especially when you're in the middle of the field like that. And so now you're drawing this attention to yourself, right? When umpires start doing that, or man, there was a horrible call. And did you see the Red Sox game last night that the dude got rung? I think it was Plawecki, got rung up on a pitch. It was like, I mean, at his shoes. I mean, it was such a bad call. And it was a full count. They had bases loaded and a full count and 2 outs. And he gets rung up and the inning's over instead of a run comes in, still bases loaded, still. So, he gets kicked out. Like Alex Cora got kicked out. I think the pitching, somebody else got kicked out. It was wild. But anyway, there's a long story just around the idea that, when you see umpires just inserting themselves, if an umpire is doing his job or a referee is doing his or her job, you shouldn't even know they're there, more or less. I mean, outside of like if they have to come up and get on the mic and make a call or whatever, football, you see it more frequently. But you shouldn't know they should just be, the pace of play should be dictated by the players on the field. The umpire should not be part of the show. And that's the part that bothers me when they make themselves that way. And that's the problem that we got to deal with. But at the same time, I'm appreciative of the fact that there's still folks out there wanting to ref and ump and do these things. But man, it gets tough to watch sometimes.
Yeah, I don't think there'll ever come a time where it's just all robo umps, but I do think that they need to implement a review of strikes and balls, which could be a very quick 10-second type of review. If you've ever watched tennis, you'll see it's a very, very quick process. And I mean, as quickly as they show, a replay after a strike or a ball that's called a strike outside of the zone on TV, they could show that. All they need to do is just flash up the box and show whether it was a strike or a ball. The ump says, okay, whatever, that's what it was. So what you do is you'd have David Ross, for example, a ball gets thrown, it's out of the zone. He says, I want to review that. They throw it up on the screen. It shows it was a ball, and that's how they call it. And they go on, and they get every team gets a certain number of those. I think that's the way to solve that. At least it's a way to address it. Where it's just an egregiously bad call, or if it's a game-changing call or something like that. That seems like such an easy fix to me. And so I don't know. Hopefully that's something they end up doing at some point in time, but we'll see. In any case, the Dbacks and the there's a cat. We have a cat sighting. Chef
is on the show. Say hi, Chef.
See if we can get a meow.
Probably not. He's
Chef is not.
He might just purr into the mic.
For those in the podcast, there is a cat. Evan is holding his cat, Chef, that you may know from Evan's Twitter feed, and just purring away, just hanging out with us for the podcast. So let's talk. But let's. It's Chef, like as in Chef Field, not chef as in like a cooking chef. Just for people's general knowledge. The Cubs, I would tell you who they have pitching, but I don't know, except for tomorrow they do have Drew Smiley going against old friend Zach Davies, who has a 3.34 ERA, surprisingly. Like he was awful last year for the Cubs. And anytime he pitched, it was just a disaster. So yeah, of course he'll come in and shut the Cubs down on Friday. And then the Cubs, we don't know who's going for the Cubs on Saturday and Sunday, but we have Zach Gallen, who has been just amazing. 0.95 ERA. Look out for that. And Humberto Castellanos going on Sunday for the Cubs. I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to make it down there to see the Cubs this weekend. Maybe on Sunday. We'll see. We've got a few things going on. My son's baseball's coming to an end. He was in the semifinals last night, and they ended up losing in like the bottom of the 6th inning, which would be the final inning for the Little League 10U team. And they were all, all the kids are crying and stuff. And it's just, you don't like to see your kids cry, but in the same sense, it's like these kids care so much that's kind of, it's endearing to see that. But anyways, I digress. What are you thinking about this series? This is kind of a toss up. This is a tough one to predict. Are you there? Evan is frozen in time. So if anybody see, people on the podcast can't see that Evan is frozen, but I see it. And are you back?
Yeah. I don't know what's my Wi-Fi is. Come on, Xfinity, get your shit together.
What do you think about the series against the Diamondbacks? It's a tough one to call, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think heading into the season and kind of looking at it, I figured this was not a gimme, but one of those that would be a little easier. I don't know, but for some reason, I guess I can't say they play well against good teams because they certainly didn't against the Dodgers, but they've done okay against what would otherwise be considered really good pitching. I mean, certainly that, like we talked about, that opening series, didn't do real well against the Brewers back up in Milwaukee, but I feel kind of good about where they're at if they continue this. I still think it's one of those from like, I mean, you get 2 out of 3 at San Diego. I sort of feel like, again, 1-3 and walking out with a split of the road series in general is kind of where I feel like they'll probably land. I would not be surprised by them winning another one, but I'm sort of like, man, I don't know, dude. They just won another series. I'm feeling like a 1-3 or 1-2 is probably where they land. Lose the series, split the road trip.
Yeah, I mean, with all the injuries that the Cubs are facing, I mean, not knowing when Seiya Suzuki is going to be back in the lineup, and knowing that Nico Horner, he's not on the IL yet, but I assume he's going to be there soon. With a sprained ankle, I mean, typically that's something that can keep you out for a little while. And I'd be surprised if they rushed him back, particularly from the shortstop position where, the ankle is pretty important. So I'm thinking the Cubs are going to be doing well to get one out of 3 in this series. And it may well be the Friday game. If they lose that Friday game with Zach Davies pitching against them, I'm going to be real concerned, because Zach Gallen is pitching so well, and just with not knowing who's going to be able to go for the Cubs, they may have to call somebody up. They may have to, I mean, Mark Leiter may have to go again. Didn't they just call?
Yeah, they just brought him back up.
It's impossible to keep track with all the moves they're making. I mean,
DFA'd Adrian Sampson. Like, these guys are just getting, and that's where this is where my concern was right at the beginning of the season. Although I think what we'll see, and somebody else brought this up out there before, what we saw at the beginning of the season was they signed a bunch of these guys, in addition to just Miley, and then again bringing in Leiter when they did, and then who's the other one I'm trying to think of? Stephen Brault, who they ended up restructuring that, from a guaranteed to a minor league deal, and he's hurt anyway. But bringing on a bunch of these dudes, kind of whether they were 40-man additions or whether they were just guys who were being stashed as kind of organizational depth pieces at AAA, it pushed a lot of these other pitchers down the line. I mean, we saw that with Max Bain starting out at South Bend again, and he just got promoted to AA. So what we're starting to see, I think, is some of these guys, and again, I wouldn't be shocked if Leiter is not long for the organization, but I guess that's probably something I've said 2 or 3 times over the past 3 weeks. So we'll see. But you bring these guys in, and for lack of a better, they're, I don't want to say chum, like that's the first word that comes. Not that, because then you're attracting sharks. I don't want it to make it look like that, but there are a bunch of guys you bring in to whom you really have no ties, who are incredibly expendable. And it's unfortunate to talk about players like that, but that's really what they're looking at, I think, is they brought a bunch of these guys up to serve as sort of fodder for the machine that's going through, and as they churn through these roster issues, then once those guys get DFA'd, they move out of the organization, it clears a bunch of spots, and now you see the upward movement of a lot of these pitching prospects through the system. So whether that's DJ Hers moving up at some point again, I mean, he's been dominant. We're seeing again Chris Clark and Max Bain moved up to AA. There's gonna be spots for other guys, and I just wonder, like, Caleb Killian has been pitching really, really well. I wonder, does he get a crack in the second half, particularly if they end up trading? I mean, if they end up trading guys, I can't imagine why Killian would not be up and getting a spot and getting to move. So I think they're just, you see these guys get it, Hermosillo goes to the IL or whatever. So somebody else can, and they'll like activate a guy and then put him on the IL just to clear this spot. They'll move people around, they'll activate somebody at DFA them to get this other spot. And so we're going to see a lot of this, especially as all these injuries are happening. And I think once it's all said and done, by the time we get to the middle of this month, and if we get Alec Mills and we get Wade Miley and we get we see Stroman reactivated, we see Robertson reactivated, I think what you're going to see then is by necessity they're going to have to clear out a bunch of these guys who are who are kind of these quad A type players who will have to be cleared out simply because there's no more roster space for them, and you got young guys pushing them up. So
you've got this 40-man crunch that's just nuts. Anytime you try to move, you get an injury and then you got to move a guy up. I mean, the fact that they've got 2 guys on the non-designated IL is assisted in that 40-man crunch a little bit. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you're going to see guys, and Dakota Mekas just came back today off the IL. So there's a chance we could see him in Chicago later in the season, just depending on how things play out there. So a lot going on for the Cubs, a lot of moving pieces as they just try to keep their head above water, which they're not doing a great job of. If they can come away with 2 out of 3, in this series in Arizona, it's going to should be a big boost to them, at least, their morale, and they'd be coming back to play 3 games against the Pirates and then 4 games against the Dbacks at Wrigley and then 4 against the Reds. And so you've got the chance to really kind of build a little momentum. I mean, and it's not unthinkable to say that the Cubs could possibly get back to 500 in the next couple of weeks. Right now they're 11-19, so they're 8 games below 500. It'd be kind of a stretch. But, if they win 2 games here, then they're 7 games below 500. And then you're coming home for, 7 games against winnable opponents and another 4 at Cincinnati. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities if the Cubs start to hit and their pitching holds that they could be very close to 500 as they go into the White Sox series, which would be the 28th and 29th Memorial Day weekend. Against the White Sox in Chicago. So
I think I'm going to go to see him play in Cincinnati.
May as well. Close. That'd be fun.
It's close. It's cheap. both teams suck. I might be able to pick up some really good tickets on the cheap if I wait last minute. You know what I mean?
Because I'm sure you can.
I have no doubt I'll be able to get cheap tickets somewhere there, but maybe some really good, because that place isn't going to be full regardless. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that despite and I'm sure there'll be a lot of Cubs fans there. Usually there's a ton of Cubs fans there. And
yeah,
outside of the last couple years, usually go there, it's 60-40, if not 3/4 Cubs fans. So I'm reasonably sure I could probably walk down to the ballpark and just pull up the old StubHub app and find something. Maybe they got some clubs like the Catalina Club, and I can get some $80 all you can drink or something like that.
I'm not sure they do, but you never know.
Yeah, who knows? I don't think it's that cool, but they do have a really, really nice craft beer section there. So I do always enjoy going to Cincinnati for a game. So
cool. All right, Dbacks are the opponent. 8:40 Central, another late one. 7:10 Central on Saturday, and then 3:10 Central daytime or matinee affair on Sunday. Hopefully the Cubs can win at least 2 out of 3. We'll see, but we will circle back with everybody next Monday. Until then, I'm your co-host, John, and there's Evan. Thanks for joining us.
See you guys.
See ya.